Welcome to Inner Depth Studio. In a world that rewards constant noise, the people who understand the most often speak the least. They are not silent because they have nothing to say. They are silent because they are paying attention to what everyone else is missing. Tonight, we explore the psychology of silence, the hidden advantage of observation, emotional control, and the quiet power that emerges when you learn to speak with intention instead of impulse. Take a slow breath. Let the noise of the day fade into the background, and allow your mind to become still enough to notice what is usually overlooked. Before we begin, consider something that most people rarely notice. Silence is not the absence of communication. In many situations, it is the clearest form of communication available. A person may speak confidently while hiding uncertainty, but silence is much harder to perform convincingly. It reveals comfort, discomfort, patience, attention, and sometimes a level of understanding that words would only dilute. The people who stay quiet are not always weak. Very often, they are simply observing what everyone else is too busy expressing. And once you begin to understand what silence reveals, you start seeing conversations very differently. Most people believe that talking creates influence. They assume that the more they explain, defend, impress, or express themselves, the more seriously they will be taken. Yet, if you observe conversations carefully, you begin to notice a different pattern. The people who speak the most are often the people trying the hardest to manage how they are perceived. Silence makes many people uncomfortable. The moment a pause appears in a conversation, someone usually rushes to fill it. They explain more than necessary, reveal information that was never requested, justify decisions that were not being questioned, or continue speaking simply because they fear what the silence might imply. This reaction is deeply human. When silence appears, we often interpret it as a problem that needs to be solved. We worry that the other person is judging us, losing interest, becoming offended, or expecting a response. To reduce that discomfort, we speak. But strategic thinkers understand something important. The first person who becomes uncomfortable with silence usually reveals more than they intended. Imagine a negotiation. One person makes an offer and then remains quiet. The other person begins talking, explaining their position, adding details, offering concessions, and gradually exposing information that was never demanded. The silence itself did not force the disclosure. The discomfort created by the silence did. This is why experienced negotiators, interviewers, therapists, and investigators often use silence deliberately. They know that many people cannot tolerate an unresolved pause. Given enough quiet, the conversation frequently continues on its own. Machiavelli observed that people reveal themselves through their desires, fears, and impulses. Excessive speech is often one of those impulses. We speak impulsively when we want approval, when we want control, when we want to avoid uncertainty, or when we want to prove our importance. Think about how often people interrupt before fully understanding what was being said. The interruption is not always confidence. Sometimes it is anxiety disguised as certainty. The mind becomes so focused on delivering its own response that it stops receiving new information. Smart people tend to do the opposite. They listen longer. They allow a conversation to unfold before deciding what matters. They are less concerned with winning the moment and more concerned with understanding the pattern beneath the moment. This is a crucial distinction. Talking gives you the feeling of participation. but listening gives you access to information, and information is often the real source of influence. Every conversation contains two layers. The first layer is the words being spoken. The second layer is the emotional reality beneath those words. Most people focus almost entirely on the first layer. Strategic thinkers pay attention to both. A person may speak confidently while seeking reassurance. Someone may criticize others while revealing insecurity about themselves. Another person may dominate every discussion because silence would force them to confront uncertainty they would rather avoid. When you are speaking, you are mostly transmitting information. When you are listening, you are receiving information from both layers simultaneously. This is why the calm listener often learns more than the charismatic speaker. There is also a practical reason smart people say less. Words create commitments. The more you speak, the more opportunities you create for contradiction, misunderstanding, emotional reaction, and unnecessary exposure. A carefully chosen sentence is easier to defend than a flood of unfiltered thoughts. That does not mean becoming cold or distant. Strategic silence is not the refusal to connect. It is the ability to choose when speech adds value and when it merely releases tension. Consider how different a conversation feels when someone answers with clarity instead of excess. Their words carry more weight precisely because they are not competing with a constant stream of explanation. People tend to pay closer attention to those who do not appear desperate to be heard. Paradoxically, saying less often increases curiosity. When every thought is immediately expressed, there is little left for others to wonder about. But when a person speaks selectively, listens carefully, and responds with intention, others begin to pay greater attention to the moments when they do choose to speak. This is one of the quiet advantages of silence. It changes the perceived value of your words. Modern life encourages the opposite. Social media rewards instant reactions. Notifications reward speed. Public discourse rewards visibility. We are constantly encouraged to comment, respond, explain, and broadcast our thoughts in real time. Strategic thinkers resist this pressure. They understand that not every thought deserves expression, not every disagreement deserves a response, and not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes the strongest position is not the loudest one. It is the position of the person who remains composed long enough to understand what everyone else is revealing through their urgency to speak. And once you recognize that excessive speech is often a reaction to discomfort rather than a sign of strength, you begin to see conversations differently. You stop measuring intelligence by volume, confidence by interruption, and influence by the amount of attention someone demands. You start noticing something much quieter. The people who truly understand a situation are often the people who are still listening while everyone else is trying to be heard. People often assume that understanding comes from listening to what someone says. But if you observe human behavior long enough, you begin to realize that words are only one part of communication, and often not the most reliable part. A person can carefully choose their sentences, rehearse their explanations, and present an image that sounds convincing. Yet beneath those words, something else is constantly speaking through timing, hesitation, attention, emotional shifts, and the moments when silence appears unexpectedly. This is why silence can reveal more than speech. Think about a simple question asked in a conversation. Sometimes the answer arrives immediately, calm and natural. Other times there is a pause. a change in posture, a glance away from eye contact, or an unusually long explanation that follows a very simple question. The content of the answer matters, but the space before the answer often matters just as much. Strategic thinkers pay attention to that space. They notice when someone becomes silent after a specific topic is mentioned. They notice when enthusiasm disappears the moment responsibility enters the discussion. They notice when a person speaks confidently about everything except the one area that truly matters. These patterns are rarely accidental. Machiavelli understood that people protect their interests before they reveal their intentions. Modern psychology describes a similar phenomenon through emotional leakage. We can control our words more easily than we can control the subtle signals that emerge under pressure. Silence is often the moment when that control weakens. Imagine a meeting where everyone seems agreeable until a difficult decision is proposed. Suddenly, the room becomes quieter. People stop volunteering opinions. Eye contact changes. Some participants become unusually careful with their words, while others avoid speaking altogether. That silence is not empty. It is information. It tells you where the tension exists, where the incentives conflict, and where genuine agreement may be missing. Most people miss this because they are focused on responding rather than observing. When your mind is busy preparing what to say next, you stop noticing how the conversation is changing around you. But when you become comfortable with silence, your attention expands. You begin to see the emotional structure of the interaction instead of only its verbal surface. This is one reason emotionally intelligent people often appear unusually perceptive. They are not reading minds. They are reading patterns. A pause after a compliment can reveal discomfort with praise. A pause before answering a direct question can reveal uncertainty. A pause during conflict can reveal restraint, fear, calculation, or the effort required to maintain composure. The meaning depends on the context, which is why strategic observation is more valuable than quick judgment. Silence becomes especially revealing when people are under emotional pressure. Consider how someone behaves when they are criticized, rejected, ignored, or confronted with an uncomfortable truth. Some people become louder, others become defensive. Some try to change the subject, while others withdraw into silence. None of these reactions is automatically good or bad, but each reaction reveals something about how that person manages stress, identity, and vulnerability. The goal is not to become suspicious of everyone. Strategic thinking is not paranoia. It is the discipline of noticing what is already present instead of forcing reality to match a preferred interpretation. One of the most powerful conversational skills is the ability to remain quiet after asking a meaningful question. Most people ask a question and then rescue the other person from the discomfort of answering. They add explanations, soften the question, suggest possible answers, or begin speaking again before the silence has had time to do its work. As a result, they receive a polished response rather than an honest one. A calm silence creates space. In that space, people often reveal priorities they did not intend to reveal. They clarify their own thoughts out loud. They expose contradictions between what they say and what they truly want. They fill the silence with information because the human mind is naturally drawn toward resolution. This is why silence is not passive. Used well, it is an active form of attention. Notice also how silence affects your own thinking. When you stop reacting immediately, you begin hearing your internal responses more clearly. You can distinguish between genuine intuition and temporary emotion. You can recognize whether your desire to speak comes from clarity or from the need to reduce discomfort. That distinction changes decision-making. Many regrettable words are spoken not because they are true, but because the speaker could not tolerate the silence that came before them. Strategic thinkers learn to sit with that silence for a few seconds longer. Those few seconds often prevent explanations that weaken a position, arguments that escalate unnecessarily, and emotional reactions that reveal more than intended. The paradox is that silence does not make communication weaker. In many situations, it makes communication more precise. When every moment is filled with words, meaning becomes diluted. When silence is allowed to exist, important words stand out more clearly against it. A deliberate sentence delivered after thoughtful silence carries a different weight from a sentence delivered impulsively to avoid a pause. This is the hidden power that many people overlook. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a mirror that reflects attention, emotion, confidence, discomfort, and intention. And once you begin listening to what silence reveals, you realize that conversations are rarely defined only by the words that are spoken. They are often defined by the truths that emerge in the quiet moments between them. Most people think influence comes from speaking first, reacting quickly, and dominating the conversation. But if you observe high-pressure situations carefully, you will often notice the opposite pattern. The person who remains calm usually controls the tempo of the interaction. Tempo is one of the most overlooked forms of power. In music, the tempo determines how everything else is experienced. In conversation, the same principle applies. The person who controls the pace of speech, reaction, and emotional escalation often controls the direction of the exchange without needing to appear dominant. Think about an argument. One person becomes louder, faster, and more emotional. Their words begin arriving before their thoughts are fully formed. The other person slows down. They pause before responding. They keep their voice steady. They do not mirror the emotional intensity being directed at them. Notice what happens psychologically. The calm person creates contrast. Their steadiness makes the other person's urgency more visible. Their pauses create space that interrupts the momentum of emotional escalation. Without saying, "Calm down," they change the rhythm of the interaction. This is why emotional control is not just a personal virtue. It is a strategic advantage. Machiavelli understood that people who are ruled by impulse become predictable. Anger, fear, excitement, and insecurity all narrow perception. When someone is emotionally overwhelmed, they tend to reveal intentions, make concessions, overcommit, or react in ways that can be anticipated by a calmer observer. The calm person is harder to predict because they are not being pulled by the immediate emotional current of the moment. Consider a negotiation. One side feels pressure to reach a decision quickly. They fill silence with explanations, justify their position repeatedly, and become increasingly concerned with obtaining immediate agreement. The other side remains composed, asks fewer questions, and responds only after considering the information. Who appears to have more leverage? Often, it is the person who seems least rushed. Urgency transfers power. When you communicate that you must have an answer immediately, that you cannot tolerate uncertainty, or that you need the interaction to end in your favor right now, you give the other person information about your pressure. Strategic thinkers are careful about revealing unnecessary urgency, because urgency often weakens bargaining position, emotional clarity, and decision quality. This does not mean becoming cold or unresponsive. It means learning to separate internal emotion from external behavior. A useful question is this: am I responding to the situation, or am I responding to the feeling the situation is creating inside me? Those are not the same thing. Someone may ignore your message and create anxiety. The anxious feeling is real, but it does not automatically mean the wisest action is to send 3 follow-up messages immediately. A colleague may criticize your work and create anger, but the anger does not automatically mean the strongest response is an instant counterattack. The pause between feeling and action is where strategic control lies. Most people experience an emotion and move directly into expression. Strategic thinkers experience the emotion, observe it, and then choose whether expression will improve the outcome or merely discharge tension. This is why calm often feels powerful. It signals that a person is not being controlled by the immediate environment. Notice how skilled leaders behave during uncertainty. When everyone else is reacting to rumors, setbacks, or unexpected problems, effective leaders slow the room down. They gather information before making declarations. They resist the pressure to provide dramatic certainty when the facts are still unfolding. Their calm becomes a stabilizing force for everyone around them. The same principle applies in personal relationships. When conflict arises, many people focus on winning the argument. Strategic thinkers focus on preserving clarity. They know that conversations held at maximum emotional intensity rarely produce maximum understanding. By reducing the tempo, they increase the probability that both people can actually hear what is being said. This is not weakness. It is discipline. Anyone can react instantly. Fewer people can remain composed while their ego is being challenged, their patience is being tested, or their emotions are being activated. That composure creates a different kind of presence, one that does not demand attention, yet often commands it naturally. There is also a deeper psychological effect. Humans unconsciously synchronize with the emotional rhythm around them. A calm person can lower the emotional temperature of a conversation simply by refusing to accelerate with it. Their breathing remains steady, their speech remains measured, and their attention remains focused. Over time, this often influences the other person more effectively than direct attempts to control them. The goal is not to suppress emotion completely. Emotion contains valuable information. The goal is to prevent emotion from becoming the driver of every decision. When you can feel strongly without reacting impulsively, you gain access to a wider range of choices. You can decide when to speak, when to stay silent, when to challenge, when to wait, and when doing nothing is more strategic than doing something immediately. This is the quiet advantage of calmness. It gives you time to observe, time to recognize patterns, time to avoid unnecessary mistakes, time to choose a response instead of becoming a reaction. And in a world where most people are being pulled from one emotional impulse to the next, the person who can remain calm long enough to control the tempo often discovers that they no longer need to force influence. Influence emerges naturally from the stability that others cannot easily maintain under pressure.